Hi, folks. Professor G here with another podcast on human sexuality. So, I decided, because of some things I'm reading and an old conversation I was thinking about, to talk a little bit about America's sexual history. It's hard to find true accounts, but I've discovered a few books which I'm going to share with you today. When I was living in Europe, having all kinds of great sexual adventures. I lived in the Netherlands, and it's a wonderful, progressive country in general, much more liberal than the U.S., but it's a great place to freely explore your sexuality. So hopefully I'll get to share more of those great stories with you. But I remembered one conversation I had with a man from Belgium. He asked me in all seriousness, was it still legal to have sex in the United States? Of course, I had to laugh, but then I said, yes, it's definitely still legal to have sex in the United States. Uh, I find it fascinating what other people in other cultures, other countries actually think about the United States. So this man didn't even think it was legal for us to have sex in this country. I said, actually, my answer was, well, it's still legal as of right now. Who knows what'll happen in the future? So I decided to start exploring a little bit of the sexual history of this country. And so, but before I get into that, I want to tell you a few things that you might not know. Yes, in America, we have sex clubs, clubs where you can go, and there are places that are called off premise sex clubs and on premise sex clubs. Obviously, if it's off premise, you can go there, hang out, socialize, meet people that you might want to connect with, but you can't have sex there on the premises. And then there are sex clubs that you pay an entry fee unless you're a single woman. Couples and single men have to pay to go in. Single women either pay nothing because we attract, the couples who want to have threesomes, the women who want to experiment with another woman, or just men who want to hook up with the woman. And so a single woman, we're the draw. So they want to come to meet us. So the smart clubs let the single women in either for free or a very minimal charge. But yeah, we have sex clubs here in America. We have legal brothels, not that many. Everybody knows about the legal brothels in Las Vegas. There's some illegal ones in other places that you might find out about and can go to. We have nude beaches in this country. Again, people think they have to go on sex vacations to go to other countries to find sex clubs or nude beaches and all that. You don't. We have all of that right here. A lot of our nude beaches are called clothing optional. So you can wear clothes if you want to, or not wear clothes if you want to. I haven't checked it recently, but used to, you could go hiking in any national forest in the nude. Not a big fan of hiking in the nude because too many bug bites on places that are normally covered up with clothes, and I get scrapes and yeah, I wear clothes for protection. Um, there are, and if you don't want to go to the sex clubs and you don't want to go to the nude beach, maybe you just want to hang out with a bunch of sexy people. There are a lot of private sex parties that people have. And if you get in with the groups, you go to some sex clubs, you're open, you're friendly, you talk to people and stuff. I had my name on everybody's list down in San Diego area that had private sex parties. I could go or not go. You can go, you don't have to have sex when you go. You could go and just watch. You can go and just hang out with people. I like being around people that are comfortable being nude, that are comfortable having sex in front of other people. Those are the people I want to hang out and talk to. Being a human sexuality educator and researcher, and as well as being a person who participated, I, yeah, I was always invited. Again, free, great fun. So you might check into who's having sex parties in your area. One of the great things about the sex clubs, whether here or in Europe, besides again the price being less for a single woman, also single women in general, we're in charge. Nothing happens unless the woman wants it to happen. Now, I didn't go to gay sex clubs. I was going to heterosexual, but there would still be some same sex play in the heterosexual clubs. But if a man approaches a woman, whether she's part of a couple or by herself, and maybe she's laying on the bed fooling around with some people already, and he wants to get in on the action, he would reach out and very softly with his hand touch her arm, her hair, some non sexual body part. And if she doesn't push his hand away and say, no, thank you, then he knows he's welcome to join. But if she says no, that's it. And it's absolutely respected. If a woman says no and somebody persists, all she has to do is, hey, this man's bothering me. I told him no. He's thrown out of the club immediately. It's wonderful. So you can walk around a sex club and you'll have a whole line of men following you through the clubs, waiting for you to settle down somewhere and see if you're interested in having sex with them. But again, the women get to decide. All the power is in their hands. And I can't tell you how much I love that. Because the men still have a great experience, but this guarantees the women will have a good experience as well. There are sex clubs that have BDSM activities combined with just having sex. There are dungeon parties that do everything but sex. So there's lots of stuff going on in this country, even right now, as the conservatives and the religious people try to change us. There's still plenty of good stuff out there. You just have to do a little exploring to find it. So we have sex stores. By the way, a tip on sex stores: don't go in and ask a clerk who's working at a sex store what the best lube is to use. They may not know. They just got a job working there. Doesn't mean they know anything about sex or sexuality. I heard, I was in one time and heard the clerk recommend an oil based lube. And I was standing nearby. So I said, oh, excuse me, can I jump in here for just a second? And I introduced myself. I said, I'm a human sexuality educator. Uh, no, you do not want oil based lube. One, it can eat up the condoms, it eats up your toys. Get water based lube. And of course, that clerk would remember it. But I kept thinking, why are people asking somebody who just walked in here, got a job working here? Don't assume they know what they're talking about. Refer to a sex expert for those kind of questions. Okay, so that's the things we have currently going on in this country. Lots of good, fun stuff. When I was talking about the monogamous people trying to keep it from getting monotonous, you might check into some of these things. Maybe just going to a nude beach. Maybe going to a sex club. Maybe just going and watching. Then you go home and you're all turned on and then fool around with each other. Same reason couples watch porn. Just use it as foreplay to get turned on. So, anyway, that's a little bit what's going on in this country now with sex. Um, but let's talk a little bit about our sex history. I'm currently reading two books. Well, one I'm actively reading it. The other one I call my bathroom book because it sets in the bathroom, and every time I run into the bathroom, I read 2 pages because the way she wrote it, she only uses 2 pages to tell you the story about some amazing woman during the Victorian era. So, in case you're not familiar with that time in history, it was named after Queen Victoria. It came over from England, but it influenced the United States as well. Victorians were supposed to be very virtuous. By the way, just for the women. The men could still be doing anybody and anything they wanted to. But the women were supposed to be virtuous. First thing I noticed when I started studying the Victorian era is the women are wearing all the corsets that, regardless of the size of their breasts, they push them up to their neck, almost up to their chin, and they can show a lot of bosom across the top, right? That was okay because that was just showing she was a feminine woman. Her breasts were a sign of femininity and motherhood, whether she had had children or not. Breasts were for her children. That's the way it was looked at. So it was okay for that to be exposed, but nothing else on her body. Dresses always down to the ground, layers and layers and layers of clothes, corsets. Oh my gosh. I can't believe the torture devices that women have worn throughout the years. I'm very anti bra anyway, but I can't imagine living when they told you you need to be in a corset. That whole thing about women fainting, it's because they couldn't breathe. It was horrible. Anyway, so this lady, this wonderful writer, Autumn Stevens, wrote a book called Wild Women. It's not a new one. It's been out for a while. It's one of somebody gave it to me. I put it on my bookshelf and forgot about it. I have a lot of books. So it just got lost. Recently I've been cleaning off my bookshelves, taking a lot of books to the library and going through them and finding ones like this that I haven't read. So this is my bathroom book. So every time I go into the bathroom, I try to read about another wild woman. Crusaders, curmudgeons, and completely corseted ladies in the otherwise virtuous Victorian era. One of the things the author of this book does that I just love, she uses a lot of alliteration. Crusading curmudgeons, completely corsetless, 4 C's in a row. In the otherwise virtuous Victorian era, 2 V's. Every one, she's got lots and lots of alliterations. So I just love this. But as I read it, it makes me feel proud that these women, they may not be my direct bloodline ancestors, but these women are definitely my ancestors. This is where my wild womanness came from. I'm following after some amazing women. So she opens her book talking about, you know, history books just show a snapshot and rarely are women, just like people of color, uh, gay, lesbian, trans, all of those, they're not represented in the history books. People of color, they're not represented correctly in the history books. So when you get older and you really want to know, you have to do a little bit of digging. So this is women who lived during what was called the Victorian era, 19th century. And they did not fit how they were supposed to be living. I'm going to read you a little bit of the opening word to the reader. Burdened by pounds of petticoats and corseted within an inch of their life, the exertion of cracking a smile might easily have cracked her spine. This is a description of the way women were being forced to live then. She was shunned by society if she showed the slightest breach of domestic decorum. There were there were books written that told her how she should live, long list of situations she should never find herself in. One person who was determined to protect feminine virtue, always be aware or wary of people who say they're doing something to protect you. It's usually to control you. This man said women shouldn't even put books that were written by male and female authors on the same bookshelf. Their proximity, unless they happen to be married, should not be tolerated. They're talking about books written by men and women. Can't even be put on the same bookshelf. That gives you a good idea of the period of time we're talking about. Some of us, myself included, think it's been tough to live in this era. I can't imagine living back then. And people would argue, oh, but women were put up on a pedestal. Yeah, her pedestal was a prison. Ralph Waldo Emerson, great writer, but he was a man, and he was as misogynistic as anybody during that time, wrote, women should not be expected to write or fight or build or compose scores. She does all this by inspiring men to do it all. So women were just supposed to stay in the background, have babies, inspire your man. Another magazine in 1844 wrote, there's nothing more dangerous for a young woman than for her to rely chiefly upon her intellectual powers, her wit, her imagination, or her fancy. It's just, you read this stuff and you think, you gotta be kidding me. So during this time period in our country, there was a lot going on. We had the horrible Civil War. We had the westward expansion into the Wild Wild West. We had a bitter half-century struggle for suffrage, which is women's right to vote. And we had an increasing feminization of the nation's workforce. Women started leaping from their pedestals to actually become active members in society. So the book talks about, I'll read you one more short paragraph here. In San Francisco, a courtesan appeared as a plaintiff in court suing her clients for fraud. In Montana, a laundress in her 70s decked a gentleman who refused to pay his bill. A 43-year-old school teacher plunged down Niagara Falls in a wooden barrel. A frail lighthouse keeper pulled 22 sinking sailors out of the ocean off of Rhode Island. These are the stories of the women that are in this book. A pair of Colorado madams fought a pistol duel over a man. Two lovely ladybirds were legally wed in Michigan back in the 1900s. An ad hoc abolitionist spirited away scores of slaves on the Underground Railroad. You'd probably recognize her name, but you won't hear her described in this book like she is in most history books. A sectionist spy swallowed a secret message as she was arrested, claiming no one could capture her soul. And long before Geraldine Ferrara, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris thought about being president, we actually had a woman run for president back in the 1900s on an equal rights platform. So these are the women she tells the stories about in this book. I'm telling you, it's wonderful. It's inspiring. It's motivating. It's supporting. If you're a wild woman and you want to continue to be a wild woman, which I know you do, read this book. Again, make it a coffee table book, a bathroom book. Just read a story or two at a time. I just read one at a time so I can think about that woman, soak it up. And that has led to a lot of other books. In that book, they mention the women that are in the second book I'm going to tell you about. The second book is called Sin in the Second City. Second City is the nickname for Chicago. This is a story about two sisters who opened a whorehouse, and it turned out to be the most successful. Oh, they called them parlors, brothels, clubs. They were called clubs. So let me read off the back of the book for this one. Fascinating. And again, this is not fiction. This is a true story about a true brothel that was in Chicago. Step into the perfume parlors of Chicago's Everly Club, the most famous brothel in American history, and the catalyst for a culture war that rocked the nation. Minnie and Ida Everly, the two sisters who operated the club at the dawn of the last century, were unlike other madams. The Everlys made sure their girls dined on gourmet food, were examined by an honest physician, and were even tutored in the literature. But not everyone appreciated the sisters' attempt to elevate the industry. Progressive era reformers, spouting lurid tales of white slavery, ignited a fervor that shaped American sexual culture and had repercussions all the way to the White House, even leading to the formation of the FBI. With a cast of characters that includes Jack Johnson, John Barrymore, John D. Rockefeller, William Howard Taft, Hinky Dinky Kenna, and Al Capone. Sin in the Second City provides a vivid snapshot of Americans' journey from Victoria era propriety to 20th century modernity. Modernity. So there you have it. And one of the reasons that I was drawn to this book, these women were mentioned in Wild Women. So in my Wild Women book, it leads me to a lot of other books that women have written from their time. Right now, the other title's escaping me. I had another book that I read that was about a woman from that was mentioned in Wild Woman. Let me see if I can find it very quickly. The title of the book was No Life for a Lady, written by Agnes Morley Cleveland. That's another great book. She was mentioned in Wild Women because uh, she didn't do things the way women were told they had to do things. And she wrote a book about her experiences. And it was fascinating to read because it was her personal experiences that she was talking about. Let's go back to what I just read you about the Chicago's Everly Club. They were a different type of madam. See, this is what I've always said. If I could live in another time period, I would have wanted to live during the Western expansion across the United States. Would have absolutely had a whorehouse in the Wild Wild West. And I would have been, again, a different type of madam. Most of the whorehouses in the Wild Wild West were run by men, and that was the problem. Nope. If it'd been run by me, my women, I wouldn't have called them girls. They would have been women. So I would have used the term women. They would have eaten well. They would have had good medical care. I would have only hired women who wanted to do that. They weren't forced to do it. And I would have made sure they were well paid and maybe even teach them how to save some of that money. It would have been a complete, but I love helping people have great sex. So that would have been my job if I could have lived in a different time and done a different type thing. So I will continue to read and I'll be happy to share more of the stories as I work through Wild Women and I run across other women who have written their stories about their lives and how they defied everyone else and stuff. Some of these stories are just hilarious. Um, but again, if you identify as a wild woman, or if you know someone who identifies as a wild woman, you should get them this book. I'm pretty sure you can still find it. It was written in 1992, but it's still an awesome read today in 2026. Just as Sin in the Second City is, and No Life for a Lady was. Great books. Great books. So that's a little glance into our past Americans' sex history. We know, a lot of us know, have learned things like when people want to, let's go back to when our founding fathers were in charge. And I'm like, oh, you mean when Benjamin Franklin had lots of French whores? That was his thing. He was into French whores. Uh, our founding fathers had slaves that they raped. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to go back to that time. It doesn't sound like that great a time to me, especially for women. You always have to think about that. Most of what we see, certainly in school, most of what we were taught about history is white man's history. I could even add straight white man history. That's who wrote the history books. That's who's put it out there. And that's what they want us to teach our children and tell them uh, this is the way our country was founded. It's like, well, let's hear from a few other people. If you get into historical research, one suggestion I have is to avoid books written by straight white men during that time period. That's just their experience. Few of them are good about mentioning anyone else's experience. Since they wouldn't let women for a long time even be educated, since they wouldn't let women write, compose, paint, do anything like that, how do you find out what women's lives were like back then? One of the things we found out you could do is we started finding their journals, their diaries, or even personal letters. That's the great thing about letters, which to me, it's sad that letters are going away. I occasionally will still write a letter, good old fashioned, write a letter, mail it to somebody. Um, because letters are really nice historical records. Because usually you're writing someone you care about, family, friend, something. So you're not lying about stuff. You're telling what's truly going on and happening in your life. This is how we get a good look at what women's lives were like back then, if they knew how to write. Again, that's why we don't have a lot of records from people of color. They weren't taught how to read or write, so they couldn't record. Their history was passed down by oral storytelling, where people had to just tell the stories of what happened and where their grandparents came from and that kind of thing. So you have to find books that were written by people based on the oral histories they got from their families. And that gives you a little better picture about what history was like in the past, especially if you want to find out what the sexual history was. Okay, hope you enjoyed this podcast. A little different from what I usually do. Let me know your thoughts. These podcasts are available on YouTube where you can leave me comments and we can have discussions. Hope you have a great week. Until the next podcast, masturbate, practice safer sex.